When it comes to the beautiful art of sampling, there are a wide variety of ways you can actually flip the sample. In this video, I'm going to show you what I consider to be the 3 levels of sampling and the techniques that comprise them. But before we jump in, let's take a quick look at the history of sampling. The origins of sampling can be traced back to the 1940s with the French genre of musique concrète. This experimental style revolved around physically manipulating the tape, such as splicing it, looping it, and even creating new instruments like the phonogene. So one of the discoveries of this experimental music was that if you played tape back slower, the pitch would be lower, and if you played it back quickly, the pitch would be higher. This is the premise to what many consider to be the first analog sampler, the mellotron. You've heard the mellotron if you've ever listened to Strawberry Fields Forever by the Beatles. At the same time in the 60s, Jamaican dub reggae producers such as Lee Scratch Perry began using pre-recorded samples of reggae rhythms to produce rhythm tracks, which they then DJ'd over. Things started really picking up with the introduction of computers and digital samplers such as the Fairlight CMI, the Akai MPC, and the Lin M1. Once these instruments became readily available, sampling converged with an up-and-coming genre. Legends like DJ Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, and Afrika Bambaataa helped birth hip-hop, but they were limited in their tool set. Once digital samplers became more affordable for the masses, revolutionary artists like J Dilla, DJ Premier, and DJ Shadow pushed the art of sampling to a whole new level. Fast forward today, and tools like Splice have once again revolutionized sampling. This is a brief explanation behind the history. If you'd like another video to explore more on this, let us know in the comments. Let's move on to what I consider the first level of sampling. It's important to note that these levels don't necessarily equate to better sounding music. In the end, it all comes down to choosing the right sample, meaning you can use basic level 1 techniques and still make amazing music. So what are the techniques of level 1? I consider them to be chopping, pitching, and reordering the samples. Let's use this guitar loop to explore all these techniques. So the best places to start chopping are on the transients, which are the peaks of the audio, and chopping on the chord changes sounds most natural. Once you've made your chops, you can start reordering the clips. This can already have a pretty impactful effect. So I think this first clip will sound good every other measure. The other key technique of level 1 is transposing the sample either up or down. I find transposing it up gives it more energy and transposing it down makes it a little moodier. I'm going to use XO by XLN Audio to find some drum sounds and make a beat. I'm really excited that we just launched this on Rent to Own. They even added Splice integration, which makes it super easy to add your entire Splice library to XO. I find this a really fun and inspiring way to search for sounds. The last technique we can use in level 1 is to change the tempo, so let's bump this up a little bit. I'm going to use this Illmind preset for RC20 to add some color to the sound. Add some final chops and an 808, and we're pretty much set for level 1. Level 2 includes all the techniques I just explained, plus time stretching, reversing, and more advanced audio processing. I also think combining multiple hero samples into something new, something clever, is a characteristic of level 2 sampling. Time stretching used to be a lot harder, but now with warp markers, stretching samples is pretty easy. I find Ableton's especially good for this because it has a variety of time stretching algorithms. For me, it's helpful to experiment with stretching until something catches your ear. I also consider resampling a characteristic of level 2. So let's record this stretched audio into a new track. I'll just hit R on my keyboard to reverse this sample. Using reverse samples is a good way to emphasize a certain beat. In this case, the energy is leading into beat 4. And using fades is also another way to sculpt the sound. So I've applied level 1 techniques by chopping this further and reordering the samples. I'm going to add in a kick. So as you'll see by the end of this video, audio effects can drastically change the sound of a sample. I'm going to use RC20 and automate some of the parameters. I find this especially effective with the reverb. At this point, I think the sample has changed enough to call it flipped, and I've added drum sounds and 808, so let's hear what we have. Finally, we move on to level 3 sampling, which includes all the techniques before, plus granular synthesis of said sample and extreme audio processing, so much so that you can use virtually any sample to make basic sounds like drums, synths, bass. For level 3 sampling, I'm going to try to make an entire beat using this one flexitone sample. First, let's shorten it and add a fade. This will deaden the sound a little bit. Let's pitch it down and add a transient shaper. Next, I'm going to add riff and beat former to add some distortion. This will get it to a place where I can resample the sound. I'm just going to highlight parts of the resampled audio that catches my ear. Going to add some beat former to the resampled audio, as well as an envelope to shorten the sound. OTT is super clutch when it comes to drastically changing a sound. Finally, add some saturation, and as you can hear, after a whole lot of processing, we were able to take that flexitone and turn it into a kick drum. It's a long and tedious process, but rinse and repeat for all the other drum sounds. I use Little Altar Boy to get the pitch up for the snare. So you can see with transient shaping plugins and dynamic plugins, you can transform most samples into a drum sound. To make a synth or bass line from virtually any sample, you can use the technique known as granular synthesis. Essentially, we just want to loop a small portion of the audio, so small that our brains start to interpret it as a new timbre and pitch. You can try messing with the loop lengths, the crossfades, and the start time. This will all affect the timbre and the overall sound. I took a moment and added a few of Bitwig's note effects, as well as some more processing. Automating reverb with a saw synth is one of my favorite sound design techniques. So here's the full beat. All the sounds were made from the single flexitone sample. Hey y'all, thanks for sticking to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a thumbs up. It makes a big difference for the channel. Also, the history of sampling is incredibly broad. I left out so many great artists. I'll definitely have to do a follow-up video. Let us know in the comments what part of sampling history you would like us to take a deeper dive into. All the sounds you heard in the beats will be in a collection in the description. If you have any requests for specific tutorials, leave them in the comments below. As always, I hope you stay inspired, stay creative. I'll see everyone next time. Later, y'all.